Good evening, everybody. Now, in launching this stream, I attached a thumbnail of a smiling and celebratory Donald Duck. I don't know if you actually saw that thumbnail as you were waiting to click on the stream, but that's what I chose for the thumbnail image just to mix things up. And if you're wondering why I selected Donald Duck, the answer is there is no answer. I had a premonition about the necessity of placing Donald Duck on my stream because I have a feeling that most people who see a notification for a live stream from me sitting on their feeds probably would not expect Donald Duck to be greeting them, to be beckoning them to enter into the stream. So maybe it shook up your perceptions of what these streams are about. So that's my explanation of my Donald Duck selection. Now, I don't have a specific topic in mind. There are just a couple things that maybe I feel like I'd rattle off, and then I'll look at the live chats or super chats. You know what? There's a super chat here already, so I guess I'll just read it. Jameson asks thoughts on Warren's self-imposed demise. I'm having the time of my life watching it blow up in her face. Now, I think you have to be careful here. Warren may well be in a state of demise, but we just don't really know yet. There's a lot of contradictory poll data coming out in the wake of the debate in the past couple days when this controversy has been stewing. So I don't know that it's necessarily been fully processed by the electorate, or at least in a way that will become evident yet in the polls. So yes, there was a Reuters poll which did show Bernie with a slight lead nationally, but there are other polls that show a different story. And there was a Survey USA poll from California which showed Warren up 7 points since the last poll that they conducted there, with Biden in the lead. And one thing that sort of irritates me about what I'll roughly call Bernie Twitter, which tends to be a lot of what appears in my feed, is that they'll only share polls that appear favorable to Bernie. And when there's a poll that is not favorable to Bernie, they'll quibble with the methodology. And it's almost like there could never be a legitimate poll in their eyes that would not be positive news for Bernie. I just think that's a foolish way to interpret polling data. You want a wide variety of polls that use a wide variety of sample sizes and methodologies and just statistical approaches to best gauge the state of the race. So nitpicking with any particular polls, weighting of one demographic over another, I just think is a little tiresome. It's not to say that polls are immune to criticism; they're not. But the optimal way to criticize polls, I've always thought, is to just object to how they get framed, how the results get framed, how over-reliant political media is on polls. I'm guilty of this at times as well, where the latest poll just kind of dictates how you then view the state of the race, which essentially means you're succumbing to recency bias because one poll might have some issues with it. You got to look more at trend lines. So I'm all for, and I have done, criticism of the excessive primacy that the media often gives to polls and the way that they can be twisted and distorted to suit a certain narrative. But that's sort of separate from complaining about the methodology of any one given poll that doesn't show a result that you find to be favorable. So I I don't know that I think it's a bit premature to declare that Warren is self-destructed or that her demise is underway, um, because I thought right away that there was a total logic behind her attack, and the logic is that there are still remnants of the Democratic Party primary electorate who feel sort of lingering resentment toward Bernie about his alleged mistreatment of Hillary in 2016. And Warren, in now taking the mantle of the most viable woman candidate, can attract some of those voters into her fold, in part by making them angry about a supposed sexist comment that Bernie uttered in the privacy of a personal conversation. So, is that effective with me? Is that effective with people on Twitter? Is that effective with people who are currently commenting in my live stream chat? Probably not. But it's always important when analyzing politics to try to take yourself out of it and, as impartially as possible, attempt to apprehend how certain political events will be interpreted by those with whom you do not necessarily share any political affinity, right? Or otherwise, you're just transposing your own biases onto everything. So I immediately, when this attack was launched, thought that it had a chance of being effective. Otherwise, Warren wouldn't have bothered doing it. She wouldn't have bothered dropping this bomb, this like thermonuclear bomb onto the Bernie campaign, and um, you know, destroying or at least severely undermining her relationship with Bernie, unless there was an upside, unless there was a benefit to be gained from it. And it wouldn't shock me if a lot of the former Kamala supporters, not that there are that many, but there are some, have now migrated to Warren. If some of these sort of Hillary loyalist types who maybe weren't necessarily decided yet have migrated to Warren. There was an exchange that occurred in Iowa earlier today that I think is emblematic of the type of voter who I could see this attack appealing to. Let me pull it up for you. One momento. Okay, so this was in Des Moines today at a Planned Parenthood PAC event with Warren, where a former precinct captain for Cory Booker, who again has dropped out, so his supporters have to go somewhere. Not that he had a huge amount of supporters in Iowa, but he had some, and they have to decide now which candidate to support. This precinct captain stood up and said to Warren, "Today I am here to tell you that as a woman working in construction and reporting on sports, I believe you 100%, because I looked at you and I looked at him and I'm like, he did that. I know that Bernie Sanders said those things to you because I have seen your body language and I have seen his body language. And I know what men say to us in rooms, and then what they say to us in person to gaslight us. And I just want you to know that I believe you 100%. Notice how she works in the gaslight phrase. I mean, sadly, it appears that phrase is not merely confined to the more annoying corners of the internet. Okay, so this woman goes on. And what I would like to hear from you today is, I have a little PTSD from the Clinton campaign, and I don't want to see Bernie Sanders people doing to your supporters what they did to us." Whoa. What did they do, lady? Tweet. She continues, And I would like to know what your plans are for shutting that down. And when you're the nominee, winning his supporters over to your camp, because I feel like that was a mistake that we made in the Clinton camp, that we didn't mend those fences. I don't know if they can be mended, but I just really want you to know that in the core of my being, I believe you. Now, I wonder if she broke out down in tears at that moment, because wow, that sounded like an emotional roller coaster. So there are types of people like that out there. That's a precinct captain for a campaign who is now going to be attempting to galvanize, the leftovers from the Cory Booker support base to support Warren. So don't believe that Warren just kind of stumbled into this out of nowhere. No, there was a very much discernible logic behind it that appeals to segments of the electorate that she needs to win over in order to be viable in Iowa. Now, in that response, in her response to that statement, wasn't even really a question. Warren rehearsed the same sort of talking points that she said in the debate. So let me start by saying Bernie and I have been friends for a long time. We fight for the same issues. We've been allies, blah, 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 blah. And she says, that's all I want to say about that topic. Okay, so that's all you would expect her to say about the topic, because the bombshell was already dropped a couple days ago. The cat's already out of the bag. You can't put that can of worms back in the can. So it's out. The deed was done. So when people talk about Warren's demise, the thing I ask you is, do you have any awareness of the types of voters, again, in a Democratic primary electorate, especially in Iowa, where there's an outsized influence played by a kind of party operators and activists and people who have sort of organizing capacities? Can you put yourself in the shoes of those types of people who would react much differently to Warren's stunt than you might? So that's why at this point I'm not willing to just concede or grant that the attack backfired. Maybe it will have backfired, but we just don't know yet. And there are some there's kind of countervailing data there. And it's also why I find it annoying that you have people online, including Roe, associated with the Bernie campaign, including Ro Khanna, who's the co-chairman, congressman from California, who in many ways I like, and who has done some good stuff in Congress, namely on foreign policy. And I thought when Bernie picked him to be his co-chair, it was like a reasonably good sign. But here's what he said today. I'm gonna just put it up on my phone. So can you read that? I'll read it out loud. There is absolutely no justification for anyone tweeting snakes at Senator Warren or any of her supporters, some of whom include women and people of color. It should stop. At the core of progressivism is respect for every participant and a belief in reasoned debate to advance a position. Come on. You're going to get on there and scold random online commentators, anonymous Twitter accounts, for tweeting animal emojis. There's no excuse for that, he says. There's no excuse for random internet people tweeting certain animal emojis. Wow. And that's an important announcement from Ro Khanna. It's just like, why does anybody feel like they have the right to dictate how others who are not in any way formally affiliated with the campaign, maybe some are genuine supporters, maybe some are trolls, who cares? The idea that it's your authority to lecture them on what they can say on Twitter, really, the people who are demanding that you get involved and clamp down on online uh, debate and are they have like a bizarrely authoritarian mindset, and of course they don't recognize it as such because they sort of couch it in this benign sense that they're victims of something truly egregious. But this Warren woman who Roe was replying to, Jennifer Taub, she says, she said to Roe, "You have colleagues and surrogates on this website who still have posts up calling Warren a backstabbing snake, and your principal is silently condoning it. It feels like a good comrade, bad comrade game." She also asks, "Could Bernie put that condemnation out on his Twitter account? It would be helpful." Yeah, Bernie should drop everything. He should get off the campaign trail and compose a tweet disavowing random Twitter users for tweeting an emoji. It's just like these people seem to have zero awareness of how ridiculous they sound. It's like, again, they're so in their little bubble that they assign this grandiose importance to mean mentions that they get on their Twitter page. It's just like, what? Now, I grant that in terms of Twitter in particular, being inundated and flooded with hatred is not always the most pleasant thing. I can attest to that from personal experience. But why is it somehow a political priority for you to sort of just whine about this? Just let it go. There's always raucous political debate in the United States, whether on the internet or elsewhere, and has been since the advent of the country, even before. Go back and look at some of those old newspapers and what was said about the politicians of like the early 19th century, right? But the problem is now everybody's a commentator, everybody's a pundit, and everybody can make a big fuss over what happens to appear in their personal feeds. And they can extrapolate that into a grand narrative, a narrative which would not even exist but for their own myopic self-importance and assigning just absurdly excessive weight to their own individual experience on this one information medium. So that's just nutty to me. And I understand that some of these surrogates and some media figures like want to call for a truce or a de-escalation, and fine, do what you want, but it seems that there's something dishonest in just bemoaning generally that progressives are fighting with one another, and we can't have progressives fighting because we need a unified front. When you put out a message of that kind, and there have been many, it obscures the fact that the one who initiated the hostilities and launched an attack that was even sleazier than anything Hillary ever dreamed of in 2016 was Liz Warren. So why are you letting her off the hook for that? I just don't get it. I mean, I do get it in a way, but I don't have to buy into it. I don't have to, let myself be dictated as to what I can do or say online. Not that I'm like a formal declared Bernie endorsee or anything, but I have some broad sympathy with his political project, even if there's some stuff that he's done over the past couple of years that I find irritating and even self-defeating, such as his indulgence of the Russiagate narrative, which I did a video about yesterday, or his sort of uncritical acceptance of just the knee-jerk Democratic talking points on impeachment, which I would think somebody in his position could take a little more time to kind of think about it on a deeper level and understand the ominous implications for what's being done by way of this impeachment process. But, that stuff aside, most of Bernie's impact on US politics I find to be positive. But still, I'm not gonna self-censor and participate in this attempt to obscure what Warren did, because it takes like a week or two, even more, to get like anything approaching a clear picture as to what effect an attack like that will have on public opinion. So I don't think I think the jury is still out on that. Um, what else? Any super chats? Let me see. Thought I missed one. Guess not. That's okay. Yeah. So is that another Tulsi event tonight? I'm losing track of the number that I've been to on this trip. But it is interesting because you can sort of when you're basically seeing her every day, right? You get better insight on how she sort of weaves together everything that she discusses into a core theme and kind of gives it cohesion. So it's not just a scattershot discussion of random issues for her. It's something that always she attempts to tie together, even if the issues seem disparate, right? So today she was in Milford, New Hampshire, which is a somewhat small town, and it was snowing. So it was a little bit of a rough day to have an event, but she did it. And I thought one thing that struck me is that the caliber of questions that she's being asked. There was one today that was really intelligent, and there was one yesterday that was really intelligent. So the question today was from somebody who was asking about the dependency that local economies in the U.S. have on the military complex, or in other words, the way in which defense contractors and other entities that produce war-making materials have become integral to the economies in so many localities throughout the country. The question was, how do you basically change that? How do you disentangle the or uproot the dependency that people have on these defense contracting firms? Because if you tried to institute reform, the questioner essentially said, you're going to get a lot of people complaining that people's jobs are on the line. And I thought Tulsi had a very good response. So I'll just read aloud to you what she says. I gather that they're not live streaming events anymore on her YouTube page. I don't know why exactly. Maybe I don't even want to speculate, but they're apparently not doing that. So I go and just record the event, and then I just transcribe what seems notable to me. And here's part of what she said in response to that. There are ways that we can shift these skills that people have within our communities who are just looking to put food on the table for their kids and pay the rent or pay the mortgage in a way that they know they're contributing to the betterment of society, and not ever be in a place, this is not who we are as a country, where we are simply saying, well, we've got to continue to perpetuate needless, wasteful war so that Americans can have jobs. So she's basically saying that there's a way to restructure those economic incentives so that there is no longer a dependency on the production of bombs and that sort of thing. And she also said, uh, quote, when Trump says we have to sell billions of dollars in weapons to Saudi Arabia because it creates jobs here at home, I would say we need better leadership that will create jobs not dependent on the bombs that will be used to kill innocent people in Yemen today. And I just don't know if there's another candidate really who could weave together a on the fly a a critique of the military industrial complex's centrality to the U.S. economic system in a way that she did there tonight. Maybe Bernie could to some extent, but I feel like she puts a possibly a more incisive twist on it that again struck me. But I was also impressed by again the quality of the question. There was another question yesterday put to her by a it was a student group that was there from somewhere else. I mean, if you go to these events now, you run into student groups who are basically just going to observe the primary process. And like the representative from one of the groups last night asked her in a little bit of a long-winded way, but like the basic point of the question was good, and it was that basically asking her, how do you reconcile your commitment to service by way of the military? So how do you reconcile your belief in the virtue of serving in the military with the fact that the military gets deployed for what you regard as unjust ends? Like, isn't there a moral conflict there? And again, I thought she gave a pretty good answer. I don't actually have it immediately available, but it was drawing a distinction between those who have policymaking power and over the direction that the military takes, and those who sign up for the military out of a sense of wanting to contribute to a greater good. Um, so, or defend the country. So that to me was also another answer. So, if you've never been to one of these events, I would recommend it just because a lot of intelligent questions being asked. I mean, not always. Sometimes you get some duds, but there have been a bunch that have surprised me in terms of how good they were. Let's see. Anything else? Oh yeah, there was the AP put out a story on Mayor Pete earlier today where they described him as, quote, the only military veteran in the field of Democrats running for president, to which I replied, stop erasing women. Now, they did update the story without a correction, of course, but it's an AP story, so it goes out on all the news wires and can't be easily corrected everywhere it goes to. And that's how the news wires work. So there's going to be a story, an article, on local newspapers all over the country asserting that Mayor Pete is, quote, the only military veteran in the field of Democrats running for president. So on the day of the Women's March, the Women's March commemorative events, the AP decides to at least put out an initial version of their story in which Tulsi being a member of the military is, quote, erased, which seems rather ironic. Amusingly, Tulsi declined to attend any of the Women's March events today in New Hampshire, of which there were several. And that was clearly a conscious choice on her part because she's basically going everywhere she possibly can in New Hampshire where there are people present. So not going to a Women's March event was, conscious choice there, which I find good because those Women March events have always been they're basically just run by front groups for the Democratic Party. and the basic message is always elect Democrats. Yeah, maybe elect some more women Democrats, but ultimately we must elect Democrats. And just throw a Democratic Party rally then, and don't make it this like women's pretense thing. Bup, 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 bup. All right. Let's see if you guys have any comments. Give me 1 second to drink some Diet Snapple. When I was a kid, I used to drink a lot of regular Snapple. And it never occurred to me that I was consuming like liters upon liters of sugar every day. It's not what really I thought about at the time. And it would have been nice if somebody had kind of drilled it into my head that it's probably not the wisest consumption of calories. Um, and I remember trying Diet Snapple and just being repulsed by it because if you're so used to regular Snapple, Diet Snapple just tastes awful. But once you stop drinking sugary drinks, the taste for it just goes away after a while. So I don't drink any regular. I stopped drinking regular soda in college, and even just doing that, even just cutting out soda, uh, when I was more conscious of its effects for the first time, I think I lost I don't remember how much weight I lost at the time, but I lost a lot just from cutting out soda and just being marginally more healthy. I'm sure that these diet drinks aren't the greatest thing in the world, but it's better than it's better than gulping down loads and loads of sugar. So maybe I'll cut out the diet drinks as well eventually. Um, Somebody says make your own iced tea with honey. It's fantastic. Yeah, diet drinks are worse for you. I don't know. Is that right? So you're saying if you had a diet Snapple and a regular Snapple sitting in front of you, you drink the regular Snapple, even though it's loaded with sugar? I find that hard to believe. I do. I mean, I usually drink. I drink a lot of seltzer. I just don't have any seltzer with me right now. Uh, so, and I like iced tea, unsweetened. Somebody says water is the most unhealthy drink. I don't think that's true. Kyle has your seltzer covered. Somebody says, yeah, I was not aware of the whole meme involving Kyle Kalinske and seltzer until I was apprised of it. But yeah, it is amusing. But I will. I'm second to none. I mean, I will. I won't allow anyone else to claim the mantle of seltzer connoisseur because I've tried many, many seltzers, and I'm almost dependent on seltzer. I just don't happen to have it now. Somebody says, "Quit drinking soda for a month. Now it tastes like syrup." Really, even Diet Coke would taste like syrup. So the diet drinks have aspartame, which is cancer causing. I mean, again, I've heard that, but is that really true? Are there numerous demonstrating that it's causative of cancer? I just looked it up right now. Wikipedia. Okay, granted, not the most thorough research. But the first thing if you look up aspartame, the first thing it says in the cancer section is that reviews have found no association between aspartame and cancer. This position is supported by multiple regulatory agencies like the FDA and EFSA, as well as scientific bodies such as the National Cancer Institute. The EFSA and FDA state that aspartame is safe for human consumption. Now, of course, I wouldn't say that the FDA and EFSA, I'm not even sure what the EFSA is. Let me look it up. Is it the European? Yeah, it's the European Food Safety Authority. Not going to claim that they're infallible, but I don't know. It's just like I don't want to put a whole lot of thought into what beverages I consume, especially if I'm on the go. And I want something that's mildly flavorful, refreshing. I don't know. Yeah, somebody said I'm more concerned with high fructose corn syrup than aspartame. Same with me. That's kind of been my approach. Somebody says aspartame causes snakes and uses this dreaded snake emoji, which is apparently now sexist or evil. Do not use the smoke emoji. You will be put in internet timeout. You have to go sit in the corner. Aspartame is made from liquefied Liz Warrens. Now that I believe. That sounds plausible. Okay, people. It was nice chatting with you. I don't know why you're listening to this on a Saturday night. I don't know why I'm doing this on the Saturday night. See, I can't even speak anymore. That tapping was just me bowing my knee. But I appreciate your attentiveness. Appreciate your humorous comments. Appreciate everything about you. Maybe not everything. I don't know all of you personally, but I know you enough to see your wonderful commentary in my live chat feed, to see you represented by a little number on my YouTube stats. And if you're tuning in on a Saturday night, again, I'm not absolving myself of this because the same would apply to me, but maybe you should reevaluate your choices. My choice is to be sitting in a room here in New Hampshire all alone. But that's okay. It's for a higher purpose. So find your higher purpose. Get off YouTube. Get off Twitter, for the love of God, and go do something that benefits the world. Okay, people. Night, night.